Welcome to Myth or Reality Stories. Is this story a myth or a reality? Find out at the end. In the quiet town of Maple Hollow, Halloween was more than just a holiday, it was a rite of passage. The streets transformed into a ghostly Halloween ambience of a patchwork of children dressed as ghosts, ghouls, and monsters, their laughter ringing through the crisp autumn air as they roamed the neighborhoods in search of candy. But beneath the festive facade, there was a sinister undercurrent that few dared to acknowledge. Every year, the townspeople recounted the tale of the Maple Hollow murders, a chilling chapter in the town's history that left an indelible mark. It all began in the late 1980s when a local family, the Hendersons, vanished without a trace just days before Halloween. Their disappearance sent shockwaves through the community, sending parents into a frenzy as they locked their doors and kept their children close. The Hendersons were known for their extravagant Halloween displays, and that year was no exception. They had gone all out, filling their yard with tombstones, fake spiders, and jack-o'-lanterns, creating a whimsical yet eerie atmosphere. But on Halloween night, the festivities turned into a nightmare when the family was nowhere to be found. Days turned into weeks, and as the search for the Hendersons intensified, rumors began to swirl. Some claimed they had run away, fleeing the mundane life of Maple Hollow. Others whispered that they had been taken, sacrificed to a dark force that haunted the town. But as the days passed, hope dwindled, and the Hendersons became just another ghost story, a cautionary tale for the children of Maple Hollow. Fast forward to the present day, and the tale of the Hendersons had transformed into a macabre tradition. Each year, the town held a Halloween festival in their honor, a bizarre celebration that drew people from all around, eager to hear the dark tale of the family that vanished. The center of the festivities was, of course, the Henderson house, the very site of their last known whereabouts. This year, a group of thrill-seeking friends, Alex, Jenna, Mark, and Lisa, decided to visit the infamous house on Halloween night, armed with nothing but flashlights and a desire for adventure. "It'll be fun," Alex insisted, his bravado masking the unease creeping into his mind. "We just need to see if the place is really haunted." As they approached the dilapidated structure, the air grew heavy with an unsettling energy. The windows were boarded up, and vines crawled up the walls like skeletal fingers reaching for salvation. The front door, slightly ajar, creaked ominously as they stepped inside, the darkness swallowing them whole. "Did you hear that?" Jenna whispered, her voice trembling as she pointed her flashlight toward the shadows that danced along the walls. "It's just the wind," Mark replied, though his voice wavered. "Let's check out the living room." The room was filled with remnants of the past, furniture covered in dust, family portraits hanging askew, and an old television that flickered with static. As they explored, they stumbled upon a journal, its pages yellowed and brittle. "Look at this," Lisa said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's the Hendersons' family journal." As they read through the entries, a sense of dread began to creep in. The final entries were frantic, filled with ramblings about someone watching them, shadows lurking in the corners, and the feeling of being drawn into a dark abyss. "They were terrified," Jenna murmured, her eyes widening with fear. "They felt like they were being hunted." Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the upstairs, causing them all to jump. "What was that?" Alex exclaimed, his bravado evaporating. "Let's go check it out," Mark suggested, though his voice was shaky. They hesitantly made their way up the creaking staircase, the air growing colder with each step. As they reached the top, they were met with a long hallway, its walls lined with doors that loomed like sentinels. "Which one should we go into?" Lisa asked, her heart racing. "Let's try this one," Alex said, pushing open the nearest door. Inside, they found a child's room, toys scattered across the floor and a bed covered in dust. But it was the closet that drew their attention, its door slightly ajar, as if inviting them in. "Do you think?" Jenna began, but she was cut off as a chill swept through the room. "Let's just look," Alex said, stepping forward. He pulled the door open, revealing darkness so deep it swallowed the light from their flashlights. A sudden gust of wind blew through the room, extinguishing their lights and plunging them into darkness. Panic surged as they fumbled for their phones, but before they could turn on their screens, they heard it, a whisper, soft and chilling, curling around them like smoke. "Help us. Please." The voice seemed to echo from the very walls of the house, a haunting plea that sent shivers racing down their spines. "What was that?" Jenna gasped, her breath quickening as she clutched Lisa's arm. "It's just the wind," Alex stammered, though the tremor in his voice betrayed his fear. He fumbled for his phone, finally managing to turn on the flashlight. But when the beam pierced the darkness, it illuminated something that made their blood run cold. A figure stood in the corner of the room, shrouded in shadows, its eyes glinting like shards of glass. The friends froze, unable to scream or move, paralyzed by the sight of the apparition that seemed to flicker in and out of existence. "Help us," it repeated, its voice a chilling echo of the whispered plea that had filled the air moments before. "Run," Mark shouted, breaking the trance. They all tore from the room, racing down the hallway as the house seemed to groan in protest, the walls closing in around them. They stumbled into a different room, slamming the door shut behind them. Gasping for breath, they leaned against the door, hearts pounding as they tried to make sense of what they had just witnessed. "Did you see that?" Jenna cried, her eyes wide with fear. "What was that thing?" "I don't know," Alex replied, his voice shaking. "But we need to get out of here." But as they turned to flee, the door rattled violently, as if something were trying to force its way in. The whispers returned, louder and more insistent, echoing through the room like a chorus of lost souls. "Join us. Stay with us." "No. We have to go," Lisa yelled, pushing past them toward the window. "This is insane." As she reached the window, she felt a cold breath on the back of her neck, freezing her in place. She turned slowly, heart racing, only to find the figure standing inches away, its hollow eyes locked onto hers, filled with an emptiness that seemed to stretch into eternity. "Help us," it pleaded again, reaching out with skeletal fingers, an invitation to join the darkness. In that moment, something inside Lisa snapped. She lunged for the window, throwing it open with all her might. The cold air rushed in, invigorating her senses as she climbed through, desperate to escape. "Come on," she shouted, urging the others to follow. But as they scrambled toward the window, the door burst open and the figure lunged into the room, its form solidifying into something grotesque and terrifying. "No!" Mark screamed, pushing Jenna out of the way as he charged at the figure, a futile attempt to protect his friends. But the figure was too quick, wrapping its icy fingers around his throat and lifting him off the ground with terrifying ease. "Help us," it whispered, Mark's eyes widening in terror as he struggled against the grip. "Mark," Jenna cried, reaching for him, but it was too late. With a sickening crunch, the figure twisted, and Mark's body went limp, his lifeless form falling to the floor like a discarded puppet. Jenna and Lisa screamed, their hearts racing as they dragged Alex through the window and into the cold night air. They stumbled onto the lawn, gasping for breath as they looked back at the house. The window they had escaped from was now dark, the figure long gone, but the whisper still echoed in their minds. "Help us." "Where's Mark?" Alex gasped, panic rising in his chest as he searched the darkness. He didn't make it," Jenna stammered, tears streaming down her face. "We have to call the police," Lisa shouted, pulling out her phone, but as she hit the emergency number, the screen flickered and went dark. No, not now. Before they could process their next move, the ground began to tremble beneath them. The very earth seemed to shudder as the house groaned, its walls bending and twisting like a living organism. "Run," Alex yelled, grabbing Lisa's hand and pulling her toward the street. They sprinted away from the house, the whispers growing louder, more frantic, as if the souls trapped within were desperate to escape. "Join us. Stay with us." As they reached the edge of the lawn, they turned back to look at the house one last time, their hearts pounding in their chests. But what they saw sent a wave of horror crashing over them. The Henderson house was no longer just a dilapidated structure, it had transformed into something monstrous. The windows glowed with an eerie light, and the walls twisted and warped, resembling the gaping maw of a beast ready to consume them whole. Just as they turned to flee, the ground beneath them erupted, swallowing the sidewalk as the house seemed to exhale a breath of rancid air. The whispers crescendoed into a deafening roar, and the friends stumbled back, fear gripping their hearts like a vice. "Keep running," Alex shouted, pulling Jenna and Lisa along as they sprinted down the street, the shadows of the house stretching and clawing at their heels. The town of Maple Hollow was eerily quiet, the other homes dark and lifeless, as if the residents knew better than to interfere with the horrors that unfolded at the Henderson house. As they reached the end of the block, they turned to look back, breaths coming in ragged gasps. The house was now a silhouette against the night sky, pulsating with an unnatural energy. The whispers had transformed into wails, a cacophony of sorrow and despair that filled the air, sending chills racing down their spines. "Mark," Jenna whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "We can't leave him there." "We can't go back," Lisa cried, her voice trembling. "We'll end up like him." "But we have to do something," Jenna insisted, her eyes darting back toward the house as it loomed ominously in the distance. "We can't just leave him behind." "Listen to yourselves," Alex yelled, frustration boiling over. "We need to get help. There's nothing we can do now." But as they stood there, the whispers began to shift, becoming more coherent. "Join us. Help us. Save us." It was as if the very essence of the house was beckoning them back, luring them with promises of salvation. "The souls. They're trapped," Jenna murmured, her gaze fixed on the house, fear and determination battling within her. "If we don't help them, they'll never be free." "Jenna, no," Lisa shouted, grabbing her arm. "You can't be serious. It's a trap." But Jenna was already moving, her feet carrying her back toward the house against her will. "I have to try," she called back, her voice filled with a strange resolve. "Stop," Alex yelled, but it was too late. Jenna crossed the threshold of the yard, the air thickening around her as she approached the door. With a deep breath, she pushed it open, stepping into the darkness. The whispers enveloped her, a chorus of anguish that pulled at her very soul. "Help us! Help us!" Inside, the house felt alive, the walls pulsating with a heartbeat that resonated in her chest. Shadows danced around her, swirling like a tempest, and she could feel the weight of the trapped souls pressing down upon her. "Mark," she shouted, her voice echoing through the halls. "I'm here. I'm coming." But as she ventured deeper into the house, the shadows coiled around her, their icy fingers brushing against her skin. "Join us. Stay with us." She fought against the pull, desperate to reach Mark, to save him from the fate that had befallen the Hendersons. She stumbled into the living room, her heart racing as she searched for any sign of him. "Mark," she cried, but the only response was the echo of her own voice, swallowed by the darkness. And then she saw it, a flicker of movement in the corner of her vision. She turned just in time to see Mark's lifeless form slumped against the wall, his eyes vacant and hollow. "Mark!" she screamed, rushing to his side. But as she knelt beside him, the shadows closed in, wrapping around her like a shroud. "Help us. Save us." The whispers crescendoed, drowning out her thoughts as they surged forward, pulling her deeper into their abyss. "No. Let me go." She fought against them, but it was futile. The darkness consumed her, and she felt herself slipping away, her consciousness fading into the void. Outside, Lisa and Alex watched in horror as the house seemed to pulsate with energy, the screams of the trapped souls echoing through the night. "They're gone. They're all gone," Alex murmured, his voice trembling. "We have to leave," Lisa cried, pulling him away from the house. But as they turned to run, the ground beneath them trembled once more, and shadows erupted from the earth, swirling around them like a storm. "Join us. Stay with us." The whispers echoed, and as they looked back at the house, they saw the faces of the trapped souls, twisted in despair, reaching out for them. "No. No." Lisa screamed, but it was too late. The shadows engulfed them, their screams swallowed by the darkness as they were pulled into the abyss. As the sun rose over Maple Hollow, the house stood silent and still, a dark sentinel against the light. The whispers faded into the morning air, leaving behind the echoes of lost souls who would forever haunt the town, a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurked just beneath the surface. And every Halloween, as the townsfolk gathered to celebrate, they would tell the tale of the Hendersons, unaware that the house still craved new souls to join its eternal night, a darkness that would never be quenched. This cycle continued, year after year, feeding on fear and despair, a horror that was all too real, lurking just beyond the veil of a cheerful Halloween night. Halloween Ambience is a myth and totally made up by us. View the details in the video description. Please subscribe, or else.